So many things went through my head when I first booted up the game. Are they going to do the original game justice? Is the original game even as good as I remembered it? Are this guy still sick? I had so many questions and they were all answered, and I'm here to tell you this game blew every expectation I had for it out of the water. Now, this game isn't perfect. There are things in the game that are perfect, but it managed to breathe new life into this story and deliver all of the nostalgia hits that you could have asked for. I really can't stress how impressed I am that they stuck this landing in a time where so many remakes and reboots seem to be made by people who don't understand why people fell in love with the source material in the first place. That's because this game was made by the very same people who made the original over 25 years ago, which includes the original soundtrack, remastered, remixed, and even some new songs that just fit this world perfectly. So before I get started, let me just say right now, if it's not obvious, this game is amazing. If you haven't played it yet, you can just stop watching this review right now, go play the game, you're gonna have a great time, and then come back and watch the rest of this video because there are some things definitely worth talking about. First and foremost, the most controversial and confusing parts of this game, the changes that were made, and why some small minority of people who were wrong are not singing this game's praises the same way that I am. The truth is, this game's not really a remake despite what the title may have you believe. I think they ended up calling it remake because this is just the terminology everybody was using. We want a Final Fantasy VII Remake. Maybe they were afraid that if they named it something else it wouldn't have sold so well, but this game is more of a reboot, but even more so, it's actually a sequel to the first game. And it takes some time for the game to explain this. At first, there's just some small changes that don't really make a lot of sense, and admittedly, I didn't really know how I felt about them at the time because I was like, hey, why is Sephiroth here so early? Hey, what are these ghost things? What the hell's going on? What's happening in my Final Fantasy game? But these aren't the same types of changes that other reboots have suffered from, where the developers just think they're gonna change things up because they know better. No, all of these changes are intentional and it's part of the story that they're telling. So in Final Fantasy Remake, the original game that you played on PlayStation already happened. These events have already happened, whether it was in the past, whether it's an alternate reality, whatever it is, and some characters are aware of the events of what has happened, mainly Sephiroth, Aerith, and Cloud, all to different extents. It seems like Sephiroth kind of knows everything. Seems like Aerith kind of knows some things, but maybe is still piecing it together. And Cloud's just getting bits and pieces in his flashbacks. Now, there's still a lot that's left unexplained, mainly how all of this has happened. There's some fun theories out there. It probably has something to do with the life force, being that Aerith, Cloud, Sephiroth, and actually even Red 6 all kind of are aware of this. They all have a closer relationship to the planet, Gaia, the life stream, all that stuff. And by the end of the game, this all becomes more clear when you actually fight and defeat Fate and Destiny. Then Cloud faces Sephiroth and tries to defeat him by using Omni Slash, the limit break that is shown during the last cutscene in the original Final Fantasy VII, only this time Sephiroth blocks all of it, showing that this isn't gonna work this time, and the timeline has changed. And even when I figured this stuff out, I still wasn't 100% on board. Part of me just kind of wanted to play the game I played when I was younger. But that's when I realized that this game's actually doing something that I never even thought possible. This game is giving me something that I've been chasing, maybe you've been chasing for almost a lifetime now. See, we all remember our favorite games when we were young, and we all remember how we felt when we played them for the very first time. And then we also still remember how we felt when we beat them and realize, hey, I'm never gonna get to experience this for the first time ever again. There's just no way for that ever possibly to happen, which is why so many people like living vicariously through other people in their journeys through the game, whether it's on Twitch or YouTube or talking to their friends about the game, trying to just recapture a glimpse of what it felt like when you didn't know what was gonna happen and you were just on the edge of your seat. And that's when it hit me. This game, Final Fantasy VII Remake, it's giving me the opportunity to play one of my favorite games from my childhood again as if it's the very first time. Because from here on out, we don't know what's gonna happen. And while that might make you uncomfortable, and it did make me uncomfortable at first, I was like, no, they need to make sure Aerith dies, they need to make sure this happens and that happens. Well, you know what? I don't know what's gonna happen, and that maybe makes me feel uncomfortable, but now that I've thought about it more, I'm really more excited than anything. I get to play Final Fantasy VII for the very first time, not knowing what's going to happen. Now, I know not everybody's looking at it like this. Some people are unhappy that there's changes and they just wanted the remake. And what about those that are wanting to experience the story for the very first time? Well, the reality is that this game's not for them. This game's for us. It's for the people that loved this game as a kid and want to experience it again for the very first time. At first, I was skeptical, but I am sold. I am so excited. This game has firmly been put in my top 10 favorite games of all time. I am just blown away with what they've done. Now, besides all that, let's talk about the moment-to-moment gameplay, because while it can be all exciting and whatnot, if the game's not fun to play, then it's not a fun game. But I'm happy to report it's so fun to play. I'm loving the combat. The game plays incredible. It feels amazing to control Cloud, Tifa, Barret, and Aerith. The materia system is as good as you remembered as a kid. They even nailed summons, unique moves, limit breaks, multiple weapons per character, and you can freely switch between Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, and Barret at any time. As long as they're in your party, of course. Now, the big elephant in the room is that yes, this is action combat. It's not turn-based. There is a classic mode, but I didn't even touch it. I am welcoming this new change to Final Fantasy. I think turn-based systems, while can still be fun, are kind of more of a thing in the past. And I'm also seeing why some people say that they wish that Final Fantasy 16 was going to have the same combat system as Final Fantasy VII Remake. Because in 16, you don't have a party, you can't switch between people, whereas in Final Fantasy VII Remake, you can kind of pause and slow time and pick some of your spells. I don't really have a strong opinion on this quite yet because I haven't played Final Fantasy 16. But when it comes out later this month, I will be playing both of them and comparing the battle systems, so make sure you're subscribed for future videos. And one last huge positive on the combat system, the bosses in this game are so much fun to fight. And they have a hard mode, which is extremely hard to do. You have to really plan ahead for materia because you're not able to use any items at all. One thing that I was really happy to see is that even though there are some differences in this game, they still did a lot of one-for-one recreations of special moments from the first game. Now, there's a lot of great moments that happen outside of Midgar, but I think Midgar is what a lot of people remember the most about the game. I would say over half of the game's biggest moments happen here in the first 9 to 10 hours. Some of that might have to do with the fact that when we replay the game, we don't always finish it, and a lot of people probably have played that Midgar part many times. But whatever the reason is, they included so many of these moments in the game. Down to the intro where they revealed the city of Midgar, Cloud jumping off the train with Barret at the beginning, meeting Aerith for the first time, meeting Aerith for the first time a second time, Cloud and Tifa's flashbacks as kids, the Honeybee Inn, that squat side quest, that was in there, rappelling from Plate 7, storming Shinra, escaping on motorbikes. And while there's many more exciting scenes to come in the future games, they just nailed these first ones just perfectly. I'm so excited to see things like the Golden Saucer, Temple of the Ancients, Wutai, the mansion with Vincent. Seeing with how well they did with these ones, I just know they're gonna nail the rest of those moments. And I wouldn't be exaggerating by saying that this game has some of the best voice acting and animation I've ever seen. Voice actors did a phenomenal job in this game, making the characters sound exactly like I thought they would when I was a kid. And I can't overemphasize how much more it adds to a character's depth and complexity when you can actually hear their voice. There's so much tone, emotion, and communication that happens that you just can't get through reading a text box. I really could go on and on about how much I love this game, but in an attempt to seem at least slightly unbiased, let's talk about a few of the negatives. So I don't love it when Square Enix, or any company for that matter, brings characters back from the dead. And they did this 3 or 4 times in this game already, and I get it's part of the plot line, so I'm giving it kind of a pass, but there's still just something that cheapens a story when you have a character that you love, you see them die, and then there's just a scene a couple hours later of like, oh, never mind, we take it back, they're not dead. And this game did that with Jessie, Biggs, Wedge, and even Barret. And I think it was decent that they did it with Barret because Barret wasn't supposed to die, and they were using that as an opportunity to explain to you a bit of the plot device of the plot ghosts that are trying to keep the timeline together. But there's still just something that irks me when you just bring back characters. Not saying I want these characters dead, I absolutely love these characters, but that's also part of the themes of Final Fantasy VII. It's loss, grieving, but that's not to say that they're not going to still deliver on these things in the future. Who knows, maybe these characters will die some other way, I don't know. It just kind of rubs me the wrong way. And next, the side quests. From a gameplay perspective, these are unmissable because I'm going to get every damn piece of materia this game has to offer. From a story perspective, while some of these do fill out Midgar, make it feel a little bit more lived in, they are pretty missable for the most part. I would say personally, overall, you could really miss all of them, and I don't think it would really impact my opinion on the game too much. But that being said, they're all optional, so A-okay there, but I don't love them. Some of them did incorporate some cool fights and bosses, which is cool, but I would say the characters and the storylines and the side quests are just a little bit more shallow compared to the main quest. And while I do think the combat is A tier, I think there's a few things that keep it from being S tier. First off, there's no iframes. Iframes are when there's a few seconds when you're dodging that even if your character's getting hit, because you hit the dodge button, you don't actually get hit and take damage. This game doesn't have any of that. So what that turns into is a lot of the times you can't really dodge things, you have to just block, which is totally fine when you start learning how to play the game and you learn that blocking and getting hit is just inevitable. But coming from games like Elden Ring where blocking is no good, it took me a while to kind of get used to. And I think just overall, I do prefer being able to just dodge and get out of the way rather than having to block and get hit. I think it just feels better. And then there's also no way to cancel out of an attack that you're doing to block. So say you're doing an attack, but then you see the enemy is starting to do one of their attacks, and you want to quickly press block or do something, you can't do it. You're just gonna get hit. And that's just how the combat goes with this game. I don't necessarily think these are huge flaws. I think it just doesn't feel as good as some other games I've played, mainly Elden Ring, which you can cancel out of an attack to do a dodge or a block. I don't even know if I want them to change it because I don't know if the game wouldn't maybe be balanced as well if you're able to just dodge everything, but those are my thoughts on it. One last thing, the aerial combat feels a little bit wonky sometimes. It might be a camera issue, I'm not totally sure, but it doesn't seem like it's working quite right. I really enjoy it, it looks cool when it works, but sometimes you just kind of jump up in the air and you maybe hit the thing one time or you totally miss it, and it's just kind of hard to see what you're doing. I hope they fix that in the next ones. Other than those small gripes, I think this game was damn near perfect. I loved it. I don't think I smiled this much playing a game since I was a kid beating Ocarina for the first time with my older sister. And for those of you that love Final Fantasy VII that want to experience that classic game for the first time again as an adult, this game's for you. Should I give it a number? If I were to rate it out of 10, I would say it's a 9.5. It's a damn near perfect game. Alright, that's it for me. Thank you guys so much for your time. Please remember to like and subscribe if you like this video. Please share with me your thoughts on this game. Did you like it? Do you like the combat? Do you like the changes? Do you hate it? Please let me know in the comments, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.